Count stories of
And we're back. You're listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the International Business Growth Radio Network. I am your host, Jason Wally Waldron, and I am joined here today by Jen Thompson, and we are talking mergers and acquisitions, but specifically post-merger integration. And in this section, Jen, we would like to talk to you about what does it mean to successfully what is the intersection of post-merger integration and organizational change management? So we're going to put our geek hats on here. The merger has happened. We're trying to extract all of the value of the business case because, on the exit side, you sold to your strategic buyer. Your company has now been absorbed into a larger company, perhaps, or the successor company, whatever size it is. There's a lot of things that need to happen. So for those of us who've never gone through this journey, and most of the folks who we're working with, they're going to go through this journey once, maybe twice in their entire life. So what are we getting ourselves into in this situation?
Yeah, this is a passion of mine, and I think it's so underrepresented in the mergers and acquisitions industry in terms of organizational change management. As an example, we worked with a company that was working on, or they purchased another organization to integrate their product into their platform. Well, the purchasing company had not launched a product in 10 years. And they had no information, no knowledge, no skills on how to go about actually launching a product. And I think a lot of people think about organizational change management as, just training and communications, but it goes so beyond that, and making sure that everybody is on the same page as far as their, target outcomes, their goals, their vision that they want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And without outlining that, we didn't have a very clear direction. So they said, okay, let's go launch this product. And we said, okay, so you need to understand what your sales team needs. You need to understand what the pricing structure looks like. You need to understand what sort of compliance regulatory worldwide requirements there are, like GDPR and things like that. So yeah. I like to pretend like I'm sitting on a swivel chair looking around the different functions of the organization and saying, okay, what do you need? Okay, what do you need? And assessing all of those different pieces and then pulling together the right groups to cross-functionally work together. So it's making sure that those communications, the ability, the knowledge is provided to the right people at the right time.
So particularly, I mean, a lot of deals these days are done in such a way where, there are going to be 2 or 3 liquidity events along the way. There might be the first one, when the acquisition happens, and then their success. You're going to need to create some success before the next 2 or 3 liquidity events can happen, and so that implies the integration needs to work. And I heard I heard a horror story the other day, and it was very interesting to me. It was a boutique software product that was sold. It came from a group that was in the Seattle, Tacoma region, so kind of your classic tech region, right? And tech culture, importantly. And this is like 2009, 2010 to kind of give you a little time frame. And it was a very aggressive sales outfit in Tennessee that purchased this software. And to not put too fine a point on it, the cultures were so different that everyone who was part of that software team was gone within a year because, they went from that Seattle tech, fast-paced, forward-looking environment to kind of a good old boys network culture, and it was just too big of a gulf.
I see that all the time when a large company, pulls in a smaller, more family-oriented kind of company.
Okay.
Where there is a lot different culture and without thinking about, the values alignment and the way of doing business, just in terms of communication styles, things like that. I'm working with a worldwide computer manufacturing company right now that is very rigid in terms of their processes, and they kind of throw things over the fence from one function to the next. And the company that I'm working on integrating into their space is very fluid in terms of how they operate together, and they see the end-to-end process, and they know who to go to get things done quickly. They have the back channel path. Well, there's a huge discrepancy between the one versus the other. So we're trying to figure out, like, what's the middle ground here?
Okay.
Or the appropriate integration timeline to make sure that people can, it's a soft landing, an integration soft landing kind of concept.
Well, yeah. And so that sounds like one of these almost unintended consequences, because I know that the transaction in the financial case oftentimes drives square one of needing an integration, right? A merger or an acquisition is typically driven as a starting point from a financial business case, right? And the transaction itself is what kicks this thing off. But I'm wondering, if we were to step back together for a second and sort of say, okay, here's a perfect scenario. Prior to looking at transaction opportunities or really exit options, should there be a larger consideration prior to that event of cultures and compatibilities? Should people be thinking more steps ahead, I guess is what I'm asking?
I personally think so. Absolutely. Okay. No, I think that there's definitely conversations that need to be had in terms of those values alignment and, intentions with the employees. And, if it's a matter of, hey, we do want it to be transactional and more of a financial agreement, and they're okay with people moving on or whatever that is, then that's fine. But that agreement, I think, needs to be made up front in terms of, this is the vision of what we're going toward with your organization.
Okay.
Because if that conversation's not had, then there's a lot of times that, you walk into the integration post-sale and things start to happen without the right upfront thought involved in the change management part of it.
Okay, so plan possibly many more years ahead and make sure that your culture is both understood but respected and probably documented, so that it's essentially another it's another part of your capital stack. Honestly, it's called your human capital.
It is. It's your human capital. And I would even say that if you go and work with a broker or something like that, you start to articulate those as part of your requirements and your criteria of, which companies you might want to be a target candidate for. Because it's likely that some of them, some companies may not want to go work for Silicon Valley, high growth organizations. They much rather work with, kind of a Denver or local kind of entity. Something is different kind of culture.
No, I think that's really important. And I think it's important for the folks listening too, not just to understand that planning farther out than you probably thought you should is definitely an important aspect of it. Working with people who have gone through this is an important aspect of it. But I think the folks listening should know that you can actually put a price on how much the human capital is worth today and how much it could be later. And so it's not that it's not a foo-foo thing. It's still a financial and transactional decision, and so it can be quantified.
I 100%. And to dig into that just a little bit more, I think in terms of all of the specialties that are out there today and the subject matter expertise in terms of things like AI or data scientists or things like that are, those are not easy people to hire and find out
Right.
there. So if part of your investment thesis, again, is hiring that talent and making sure that you retain that talent, then those conversations about values alignment, cultural integration, process integration, and how they operate together is going to be critical to that success and realizing those benefits.
Yeah, that's very important. I'm wondering. I know that one of the exercises that takes place during an integration is really, working with both parties, the acquired and the acquirer, understanding what they're now that they're running the race together, so to speak. You need to understand their shared goals. What are you trying to get out of this? And one
Yeah.
of and one of the things that you do is you actually create a future state org chart. And I'm curious, when you're doing that. I'm curious about two things. One is where after the integration, like how soon are you having that discussion? And when you say future state, how far in the future is that org chart being created?
That's a really good question. I actually don't think it's after the integration. I think that's a conversation you have prior to sale.
Oh, okay.
Because, you do want to start realizing benefits quickly. And if there's redundancies in roles, I think you want to either identify, new opportunities for people to move into, or really give people the option to say, look, this is probably going to be a redundant effort. And then people don't. I'm working with a company right now where there is no job descriptions, no role clarity, and they're now working more jobs than they had when they got acquired, and it's just creating burnout and confusion. And it's a huge effort to figure out, like, well, what are you going to be doing future state? So in terms of the, how far in advance do you look? I would say it's kind of an onboarding, any kind of onboarding time frame, like 6 months. You should pretty much know what your job is 6 months after you get hired, right? So
Right.
I would say that future state org chart should look out about 6 months.
Okay. Well, Jen, thanks for sharing all this. We're going to take a short break here, and we're going to dive into some technology discussion here in a minute. I want to let the listeners know that you can always visit exitology.com, click on Contact Us, and request a free Grow to Exit diagnostic session. You just have to mention that you heard us on the podcast, and we will take it from there. You're listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show on the International Business Growth Radio Network.